we unveil this for the use of every one of us, as we all said this morning that this work is not for those people or that people, for every one of us. So we unveil this in the name of God the Father, so that the Holy Spirit permits me to say that.
To keep, yes, out of harm. Now, if you look at it here, sextortion has done much harm to young people. And what we're saying is kicking sextortion out of our institution, out of Nigeria, out of our nation. So that is what the red card means. We don't kick the person and the person comes back again. We fight throughout the match, the person is no longer there. So that is why we are using red cards against sextortion. And then the logo, the red is representing action against sextortion. While the circle here is talking about synergy, working together, joining our hands together to fight sextortion. Of course, the white, it means victory over sextortion. So this is how simple it is. Thank you so much.
Since you have the mic, I would start with you. And I would ask you very quickly to tell us, is there or should there be an obligation on organizations? So you mentioned you work with NECA, which is a business membership organization. So the question is, should there be an obligation on organizations to have anti-sexual harassment policy? And what's the way forward with this?
I think, I want to believe every one of us know the answer to that question. It's actually obligatory for any organization to have policies against violence, harassment, especially sexual harassment in the workplace. It is in line with the International Labour Standard. It is in line with the ILO Convention 190 against violence in the workplace. So it is very obligatory, and that is one of the things we do as an association. We ensure that member organizations of NECA implement policies that are internationally accepted in the workplace. So just to answer your question, sir, it is obligatory for every association, and which is why one of our objectives in NECA is to see how we can bring informal setup to the point where they are formalized, because in achieving, coming up with policies that fight against sexual harassment, these policies can only work in a formalized setting. So it is very obligatory, sir, for organizations to have.
Okay, so just before you go, I would ask a follow-up question. So is NECA driving that process at the moment with its members?
Okay, yes, we are actually driving that. Just last month, on the 17th of November, we had what we call a knowledge sharing session for member organization and non-member organization. What we did during that session was actually to educate and inform private employers of labor on the just ratified Convention 190 that was just recently ratified by Nigeria. It's a convention from the ILO, International Labour Organization, that was actually established in the year 2017, but Nigeria just ratified it some few months ago. And what we did was to inform private employers that if they are not actually implementing such policies, they run the risk of actually being sued to court and even other punishments being meted upon them. So we are driving this, we're at the forefront of driving this in our members, amongst our members and even non-member organizations.
Thank you very much. Let's give him a round of applause, please. We'll still come to you.
So there is punishment for even false reporting. There is also a provision for, what schools should have in place, the whole sexual harassment policies and everything we are talking about. It is rich, and we believe that when we have that bill, in place, then we'll begin to see some form of change. At least we know that it is a criminal offense, and CSOs and relevant institutions will take this up when someone reports, and we begin to see actions and punishment in place for perpetrators. I also want, generally, again, another thing is the lack of awareness. A lot of people are not aware, first of all, of available channels for reporting. Some people are not even aware that it's a form of corruption. It is a form of corruption, and you can actually report to the ICPC with your full evidence, because there's also punishment for false reporting. I keep telling people all the time, when you want to report with your facts, report with evidence, and that's why we're happy for the technology now, these electronic platforms, because you can have pictures, you can have audio. If you remember the case of the lady in Ife, and even with the Unila case with that was exposed during on the BBC Africa documentary, there were video evidence and all that, and that is what helped to further nail those lecturers. They had no escape.
What if I want that grade, maybe that grade or that job position as a person, and I am willing to trade my body or my parts or whatever for that grade or that position? Do you think it is wrong? Do you think it's a crime? Is it a crime? Is it wrong? From your experience in the current context, what do you have to say to that?
Okay, before I respond to this, is there a follow-up question to that?
No, there isn't. There isn't. It's just,
okay.
I can give you time to think about it.
No.
Okay.
It's pretty straightforward. It's not proper. It's very wrong. Because, as mentioned, is a form of corruption. In the first instance, when you come into the institution as a student, your obligation is to undertake studies, right? And then do assessments in terms of tests, in terms of exams, in terms of group works, and every other related thing. And then you get graded and you pass, right? So if you're trying to bypass that system, in the case of course, we know the case of extortion is not just in this context, staff, it could be academic or non-academic staff requesting for sexual favors from students. It could also be students requesting for sexual favors from the persons in the higher ladder of the power asymmetry, which is staff in this case, usually academic staff. It could also go both ways. I believe we're aware of that. So doing that bypasses the way things are supposed to be. We argue that because this case is so critical, because this case is so, it's not just something that has been happening for a long while, but because also it's a case that it's so buried within the confines of, it could be seen under a form of indiscipline. It's not getting the attention that is needed. That's why we always advocate that, there should be a committee designated to address such kind of issues. So that's where the formal method comes through, where you get to report to the committee that's been designed. For some institutions like OAU, they call it Anti-Sexual Harassment Committee, the ASH Committee. Other institutions have specific names for which they give it, but it's usually good to have a committee that's designated to addressing such issues. So depending on the institution, and again back to the need for institutions to have their own institutional policies, recognizing that each institution is unique, they have their way of handling things. If they want to handle it through the formal procedure, that's fine and good. If they want to handle it through the informal procedure, that's fine and good. There should be a range of options which is permissible. But the key thing is that there should be a clear procedure, clear, comprehensive, and available for everyone to know, such that in a case where, be you lecturer or student, you are faced with such situation, you know how to go about it, and you're not wondering if you should do this or do that to address this situation.
We have our red cards with us. We have them. If you don't have them, you can call the attention of the ushers. So before I allow our panelists go, I want to ask you the very last question, and it's a general question. Anyone can have a go at it, and it's, what are your recommendations on eliminating sextortion? What are your recommendations? It can be 1, 2 in 5, 10, 15 seconds.
Constant awareness and then implementation of those agreed steps that should be taken against sextortion, implementation of those steps.
Thank you. This sounds like a campaign agenda. Thank you very much, or a manifesto. Yeah?
We should leverage three things: policies, power of people, power of the collective, and technology. These are very strong tools that will go a long way in speaking up against sextortion and addressing the menace in our society.
Thank you. She said 3, but she mentioned 4. Okay, let's continue.
Let the problem be the problem of everybody. If you see something, say something. Talk calm. Talk calm. Then I also want to say that government establishment alone they can't do it alone. It's a problem of everybody. The CSO, the NGOs, everybody, teachers in the school, the counselors, so everybody, let us talk.
Thank you very much. That was more than 10 seconds, but you can go. Thank you.
Okay, mine is based on the 2 factors I mentioned at the beginning of the panel discussion. Effective policies, effective legal frameworks, effective mechanisms within institutions that will help support survivors and also punish perpetrators. And then lastly, awareness creation, not just for students, but for the government institutions, especially the regulatory institutions. It's so disappointing that ASU is not here, NUC is not here. We have only the Commission for Polytechnics. They are the regulatory bodies that regulate these institutions, and they need to be involved so much in these conversations, and take practical steps. And then awareness creation also for parents. I always say it for parents, the community at large, our traditional leaders, our religious leaders, because they have a huge, huge influence. If we want to kick out the culture of silence, which stagnates every effort, then we need to begin to create more awareness. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's give a round of applause to our panelists as they take their seats. Thank you. They have been wonderful today, haven't they? They have been wonderful today. Thank you very much to our panelists.